All right.
It's officially noon. Welcome to Thursday afternoon, y'all. We've come here together. It's so
Yay.
nice to see you. I'm Nicole Bryant, Lescher. I'm English faculty at College of the Redwoods and a coordinator for 3CSN and the brand new owner of a ceramic mug that up until 10 minutes ago said you only live once. And then I put one too many cups of tea in it, I guess, and it literally split down the middle. And so now I'm the owner of two halves of a ceramic mug. One half says you only live, and the other half says once. So that thing happened. Not sure if that means I should play the lotto, throw some salt over my shoulder. Not quite sure, but
I think it means that you're going to have multiple lives.
That's completely true. It's completely true. Well, in this life, we're going to look at Gradebook together. And let me pop that link into the chat again for you.
I can do that for you, Nick.
And so much more. My partner, who's to the left of me in the Hollywood Squares today, most of you probably know if you've been in a 3CSN event before, because she's incredible. This is the amazing Keelan. Keelan, do you want to introduce yourself, amazing Keelan?
Hi, everyone. I am so happy to be here. My name is Keelan Koning, and I work with 3CSN. I'm coordinator, and I also teach English at Cal State Northridge. And I'm here to support in the chat. So most of you already, all of you already know the drill. So any questions that you have along the way, if you can just type those in the chat, that will be really helpful. And that way, Nick won't lose her flow, and we can also help each other out in the chat.
Our auto captioning translated that into Nick was loser flow.
Well,
so I'm gonna rock that too. I'm gonna rock some of that today also.
I'm gonna work on my enunciation. Or my NCAA should.
All right. If you've not yet moseyed on over to that Google document, I'm going to invite you there. It's where we're all going together. You'll know you're in the right place if what you see is a line at the top that says, welcome to our shared learning space for Canvas feedback features. If you see that at the top, you are in the right place. And I see amazing anonymous animals along with me in here. So, so many of you are indeed here. And what I invite you to do is to engage in that first table that you're going to see there, which is going to ask for your name and your college or colleges on the far left. And then the two columns to the right of that are in blue. So as you sign yourself in, think about something you can add under the I know column. So this could be something you already know about Canvas feedback features, right? Giving feedback to students on their work using Canvas. Or it could be something you know, something that's part of your repertoire and knowledge as an educator about giving feedback in general. So just like last time, you can answer this I know question however it feels right to you, right? Is it something you know specifically about giving feedback in Canvas, or is there something that you know about giving feedback in general? And then the column just to the right of that, something that you want to know. Questions, curiosities, places you want to learn more. So what do you know? What do you want to know?
Nicole, where am I to find this document?
Hi, Lynn, great question. So if you have your chat bubble open, are you able to see where there's that chat happening?
Yes, in the chat, there's a document.
So Lynn, if you're looking for where might my chat live, check and see, do you have a series of buttons that run across the bottom of your screen on Zoom?
Yeah, I got the chat.
Great. So then there should be a hyperlink in there. It's blue. And if
There's a whole
Zoom is being kind to you, you should be able to click it and it should open a new window for you. And if Zoom is being cranky, it might open it and not show it to you. In which case you might need to choose the button at the top right on your screen that looks like a square or a double square to take Zoom out of being full screen, because sometimes that hides our tabs on this.
Yes. And Lynn, if you're stuck, please message me and we will work on it together.
Okay.
I am fairly certain that just the act of messaging Keelan actually solves about 45% of all challenges within 3CSN based web series sessions, because she's magic like that. And the other 55%, she's able to address with her fingers of fire. So we got a great size group today, y'all. This is perfect. This is perfect for talking about feedback. I'm so excited you're all here. If you're just joining us and you're just orienting yourself, we're going to be taking about 3 more minutes and engaging with that table in that Google Doc. I must have muted myself. My apologies. Again, on that Google table, we're looking to put something into those 3 columns in blue on the left. Who are you? What's something you know, either about specifically giving feedback to students through Canvas and Canvas's tools, or just something you've amassed over the years working and teaching that you know that feels really solid for you about giving feedback to students? And then that column to the right of that, what's something you want to know? Something you're curious about. If you're just getting in and getting settled, and you're like, gosh, the only thing I might have time to do in there is put in my name, that's okay. It's totally okay. We're going to have an opportunity to come back. And there's no completion agenda when we're learning together. Our goal is to make meaning. You'll have access to this document long after we spend time together today. So you can continue to add great ideas to that table and the other things we're going to interact with later in the session and then after our session.
We have a very good question in the chat about the recordings, and I just want to let you know that we will be putting the recordings for past sessions up on our YouTube, and also we'll be sharing them inside of this document in your documents. Okay, so you can have those. Okay, thank you for that wonderful question.
So since we've got a couple participants who are still getting to a place where they can see Google Docs, I'm going to go ahead and share screen as I move us into our next place. That way you can see what I can see, what we can see, and it'll keep us moving along together. So one more time, pages 1 through 5, that table, not only is it helpful for me to see where folks are, where our collective already existing wealth of knowledge is, which is big and rich, and what folks are curious about. But as a metacognitive move, it's really valuable anytime I'm working with a group of learners, students, colleagues, otherwise, just having that moment to say, what do you know? What are you curious about? Really lays the foundation for new knowledge to come in. It tells our brain like, here, let's connect this new knowledge to known knowledge. So it's a great move to make as we enter into learning together. Another great move to make as we enter into learning together is to take a stop on our road at our community agreements or norms. These are our stated values and practices that we believe are going to help us as a group to be the most supportive we can of one another and of the learning community that we share during our 90 minutes together. You all added a great one to our list last week, which was let's encourage conversations and practices that lead to more equitable grading. And I added one or two based on our session last time and just my continued thinking about engaging in sessions, dialoguing about grading. And so what I would invite you to do is take a moment, look over those community agreements on page 6. You can do that by looking at your screen or at your separate Google Doc. And these are always flexible. We're always adding, designing, redesigning this as suits our needs. So if there's anything missing here, go ahead and pop it in the chat, or you can go ahead and add it as a bullet point at the bottom, whatever feels right for you, so that this set of agreements can continue to reflect us as a group. Keelan, any suggestions coming up there in the chat that I should add into our list?
No, I do not see any at this time.
So as always, this list is being made as we are together, which means if you think of something later in our time together and you're like, oh, you know what? We should add that to our norms. We should add that to our community agreements. Pipe that right up. We can do that at any point. And surfacing those things for each other helps us to continue to make this environment that we're creating dynamic and responsive to our group. I am teaching a late start class right now, just started a couple weeks ago. And so my students and I are busy making our community agreements for our class together just about the same time I'm doing this with you. So we just got norms all over the place. It's a good thing. With that, let's go ahead and move to page 7. In our last session, I invited us after we completed that table to deep dive into a little bit of reading first. I felt that for that session, starting by anchoring with where you needed to be made really good sense. This session's a little bit more narrow in its focus. We're specifically looking at feedback features within Canvas. And so I'm going to start by doing a bit of modeling, and then I'm going to give you time to dialogue with each other. I'm going to give you time to explore some resources. So all of those things are coming. We're just moving the parts around a little bit to fit our content for today. As always, when I'm thinking about what I want to share with you, I'm working backwards in my design of this from those questions that are anchoring me as a course designer, as a teacher. And so 3 of the central questions that really shaped what I'm going to model and show for you today are number 1, first, how do I comment on student work submitted on Canvas, right? So a very how-to kind of tools-based question. You know, I've got these tools, how do I use them? That second question, how can I use commenting features to support student revisions and strengthening? So for me as a designer, and when I model to you, just that invitation for us as teachers to think about the feedback choices we're making and align those feedback choices with our goals for that feedback, right? Because how we do that feedback may very much influence what students do with the feedback we give them, right? So if my goal with my feedback is for students to revise or strengthen their work over the course of the semester, or maybe in the first couple weeks of class, my goal with feedback is just to get them to stay, right? To help them to see that they're capable, that they're going to have time to strengthen. And so, you know, really thinking about where's the assignment that you're making that you want students to complete? Where does it fall during the course of your semester? What are your goals for students with that assignment? And then thinking about how to make feedback happen related to those goals. And then that last question, how do students access my feedback on assignments? We covered this a little last time, but it's always good to stop back here, especially for folks that might be joining us for the first time today, because it is not intuitive for students to see their feedback on Canvas. So I'll make sure that we take a look at that as well. So I'm going to switch my course view here again in my course that is a bit of a fib, so I hope that you'll indulge me with that. This is one of my courses that's called a sandbox, right? So it's a design space for me. It's not a real class. It's like a baking show in that everything that you're going to look at, I made as my own test student. But it's useful because it means I can show you lots of stuff in the gradebook and not be concerned that I'm sharing student information with you. So that's why it appears as if I only have one student in my class, because I do. That person's called test student, and it's just me, right? Playing around with my own class. You also have a test student in your classes. If you want to know where that test student lives and take actions as that test student in your class, I will show you in a bit how you can do that so that you can see things from a student perspective relatively accurately in your classes and play around with the gradebook a bit. So let's imagine that test student is a student in my class. Let's imagine that I have set up an assignment. In this case, the assignment I made was an essay on the brontosaurus because sauropods are cool, and they are, right? The lawnmowers, the prehistoric lawnmowers, and hedge trimmers. And so I'm now at a place where I want to give feedback to the student. I know that I have something to give feedback on because there's an icon that shows up in that box, right? So my student's name is over here to the left. And then if I've taken action on something, I've graded it, whatever, I've given it points, I'll see that score in the box. If I have not yet taken action, there's something for me to grade and I haven't done it, I'll see an icon. And then that tells me, oh, I probably need to grade that. If a student hasn't submitted something, it'll show up as a dash. So in this case, I'm here, I see I have something to do. I can arrive at a place to give feedback on this essay in a couple different ways. I can click on these 3 little buttons to the top, and then I get this drop-down menu, and my second choice is speed grader. So I can get there by going this way. Or I can click on it, and if I click on it, I could put in a score. Having not read it, that doesn't seem like the best idea at this point, but I could, right? But I also get this box with an arrow to the right of the score. And if I click on that box, then I get this kind of, I don't know, sidebar view that happens over here. And the second choice down is speed grader. So visualize with me for a moment. When I choose from my course to go to Gradebook, right? When I choose from my homepage on my course to go to grades, it's like I walked down a hallway, right? And I've arrived at this room called the Gradebook. Okay. But if I want to go give feedback other than a numerical score, if I want to go see that assignment and engage with it, I have to go down yet another hallway. And that hallway is called speed grader. So here I am in the central room of my gradebook, and I need to go down that hallway to speed grader. So I'm going to click into speed grader. Welcome. Here we are. Again, this is a fake class. It's a fake student. It's just me. And it's also a fake paper, but it's useful for our purposes of modeling. So what you see on the left, it's a split screen view. It's not quite split down the middle, but on the left-hand side, you're going to see that student assignment. If it's an assignment where they've uploaded a document, you'll see that document uploaded. If it's a text box, you'll see the content from that text box visible. If it's a discussion forum, then what you'll see is an accumulation of all of that students' posts and responses to others, right? So it separates by student. I'm grading by student. So if I asked my students to submit an initial post and then respond to 2 class colleagues for a discussion, I would see the initial post and the 2 responses, or however many they made, over on the left. And so I list those different assignments here because no matter what you see on the left, how you engage with giving feedback is the same for all three of those types of activities. Right? In all three of those situations, you're going to have a split screen where you see whatever students have done, the moves students have made on the left-hand side, and you have ways to engage with students on the right. If it's late at night and my eyes are bugging me, I can grab those little, wait, where did they go? Ooh, gasp, hold on, where did they go? All right, folks, I'm gonna go back out and see if it'll come back. Where did my grading panel go? There it goes. All right. Well, it went into the abyss, but here it comes back. Okay. So I was going to say you can adjust this to the left, but apparently be a little careful with it. If you click it wrong, it might go away until you go back out. But if you have a mouse, which I highly recommend while grading in Canvas, even if you have the availability of a touchpad, it's really helpful to have a mouse. I'm going to click on these little buttons and I'm going to pull this over a little to make a more even space between what I see on my left and what I'm completing on my right. So the first choice that Canvas gives me is a spot to put in a score. So if I wanted to read this, whatever's on the left, engage with that student submission, I could put in a score right here. A score is one way to communicate to students. I don't know that I'd call it feedback, right? I'd say that it's a way to communicate, but I wouldn't call it feedback. If we think about communication as being one part message and maybe two parts interpretation, a score by itself without anything else leaves a really, really wide avenue for students to make interpretations in response, right? They might think that they got that score. Let's say it's a low score. They might think that they did everything wrong. Maybe they only did one area that they were really struggling with, right? They don't have that guidance to know more than, did I do a good job? Did I do a not so good job? And so again, if I walk backwards, if my goal is more than to communicate about the action they took, if my goal is bigger than that, I don't want to just assess the move they've made. Let's say my goal is bigger and I want to assess the move they've made, but I also want to, let's say, motivate them to keep trying. Or I want to assess the move they've made and be really specific about what they could strengthen maybe for their next assignment, or what they could revise if this particular assignment gives that opportunity. I'm going to need to do more than give a score. Sorry, that rhymes. Because a score by itself doesn't bridge my students from this activity to what comes next. It's simply an assessment of this activity. And I'm going to try and bridge them every time. Everything they do in my class, I want to be thinking when I grade about where I want them to get next, because we're just in a stepping stone at this point. So I can put in that score. Let's say they got 15 out of 25, right? I can put that in. In our next session, I'm going to talk about how to design rubrics. If you've used a rubric in Canvas before, what to notice at this point is that if you have a rubric, it will show up directly beneath this place where you put in a score. If you don't have a rubric and you've not built a rubric yet, don't worry, we're getting there next week. Where I would love for you to focus your eyeballs and your ears at this moment is down here at the bottom. You're going to see a section that says assignment comments. It has a box and then it has icons beneath it. So I'm going to take a couple minutes to walk through how to interact with these particular tools, but I want to pause for a second to give you a chance to process and to check if there's any clarifying questions at this moment. Anything I've modeled or showed that I could clarify or say again for you. I know I'm a fast talker.
I'm not seeing anything in the chat currently.
Maybe it's like a cliffhanger. I've got you on pins and needles. What does this box do? What do these icons do? Okay.
If you use a rubric, I'll give you one just
Sure.
for the fun of it. If you use a rubric, I adore, they're, life-saving, I think, but you get one, but you end up with a number that says total points, which is more than 0, assuming the students have done whatever they're going to do. That number doesn't suddenly pop into the score box, or does
Great
it?
question. Great question, Lucy. What I'm going to have to say is I can answer that sooner than next week through an email, or I can answer that question next week when we go to rubric design, only to make sure we don't go down a rabbit hole into another.
It's a yes,
super,
a yes
it's
no
just
with,
a, that's
ballpark.
part of a bigger conversation on checking a bunch of boxes under the rubrics, which is an absolutely beautiful topic and deserves our time and attention. And I promise we're going to get there next week.
All right, Sherry has her hand up.
All right.
But before that, Lynn had a question in the chat. How do you get the notes column in Gradebook to show up?
Oh, great question. We covered that last week. So when I come back out of this view, I'll answer that question. I've got it on my notes right here. I just don't want to take us out of what we're looking at to get that, but it's noted, and it's funny because we're doing notes, and I will show you that when we zip back out of this in a moment. Excellent.
All right, thank you so much. And Sherry, you can go ahead and ask your question.
Okay, thank you. I blinked, so I didn't see how the 15 score got in the score box. Did you enter that manually?
I sure did. Great clarifying question. Yep.
And so I've noticed to my disappointment that when I use the rubric doesn't automatically fill in that score box. Then I have to save the rubric with its scores and then go back and enter it manually. Is that the way it's done?
It's not, and that was that's you are the second to ask that question. So I'm thinking at some point, let me save a couple minutes towards the end of our session, and I'm going to redirect us there. In order to answer that question and how to fix that, I've got to open and design a rubric with you. And so I can't go there now, but
Sure.
But I think I would make you and Lucy's day if I showed you where that checkbox was. So it's on my list to do.
Okay, thank you.
You bet.
Lucy looks delighted. Okay, and then we had a question from Laurel. What is the difference between notes and comments?
Great question. So the earlier question on notes in the Gradebook is something internally facing to the instructor. And so when we go back to that page, which we cannot see at the moment, it's not visible on my screen right now, there's a place on the Gradebook itself where I can make notes to myself about a student. The student does not see it, only I see it. And so, for example, I use that in my Gradebook when students tell me their preferred names and their preferred pronouns. I add that content into that notes page. It shows up right next to their name in that first column. And those are to me. I could also use it as a place to put notes if I notice a trend in student performance on something, or let's say a student has accommodations and I want to, keep that in the forefront of my mind anytime I look at the Gradebook or I'm designing something. It's a deposit space that's available to me as an instructor. So that's what notes means. Here we're talking about comments. Think about this as your dialogue with students. So it is a dialogue about an assignment, but it can also be a dialogue that, again, motivates students to think about what they want to do for the next activity they do with you, how they want to continue to strengthen. It can also be a dialogue that literally goes back and forth, and I'll show you how that works in a minute. All right. Are we ready to launch into these? Are we feeling ready? Are we good? Lucy says, Lucy emphatically nodded. If Lucy emphatically nods, we're going, people. Here we go. All right. So again, coming back to that place where as an instructor, I want to be mindful of my goal with my feedback, right? And this takes some practice to get there, but it's really worth doing, of thinking like, when I put these comments in, what's the move I want my students to do in response? Okay. And that may vary from assignment to assignment or point in the semester to another, but there's several different ways that I can give students feedback. One is I can type comments into here, right? So my students have completed some sort of activity or discussion over here, and I can type comments right into this box. In general, when I'm giving overall comments, right? And that's what I'm going to call these, because once I show you next week how to do rubrics, you'll be like, oh, I want to do those things together, right? I want to use the rubric for a more specific analysis of different elements of student performance, right? So that's coming next week. So imagine that this box, this assignment comments, think about these as holistic comments, sort of this is an overall comment in response to the student submission, but it's also that first place of dialogue between me and the student, in these comments. And so for me personally, when I complete comments here, I'm going to start by addressing my student by name, right? So hello, Keelan. And then, Keelan, you're my test student right now, just so you know. So hello, Keelan. And then me personally, these are overall comments. I'm going to focus on giving a comment that is an observation. And then I'm going to focus on giving a comment that's a suggestion. I want my students to know that I see them, that I see that they have efforted, and then I want to help them to take what they hear from me here and apply it to where we're going next, right? So I'm going to observe, and then I'm going to suggest. And in my mind, when I call it for myself an observation, I give myself permission to notice something powerful or unique or something that my student cared about, even if it's not perfect, right? So it's not an evaluation, it's an observation. I can evaluate with my rubric. My rubric's going to help my students to see area by area, how well are they meeting the goals. But my comments don't have to do that because I've got this other tool to do that. My comments can be more about connecting with my student. So observation, right? Hi, Keelan. I noticed that you did a strong job adding specific details about the photosynthesis process. And I really connected with the example you included about growing up in Oregon. Notice all those red spots. Oftentimes, as long as I've got a mouse, I can right click and fix my spelling. Okay. So there's my notice, right? I observed, I noticed, right? And then a suggestion. So maybe here my suggestion might be something like, the second part of the assignment was to discuss a future way in which photosynthesis can be taught to elementary school children. Let's imagine Keelan is let's imagine I teach education and Keelan is in an elementary ed program. School children. I would suggest that you add more details on your proposed suggestion as you revise for the chapter project. So that might be my suggestion if they can revise. If not, I could say something instead like, in our next unit activity, make sure to be thoroughly detailed, not just on what you see and how it relates to you, but also on how you would apply and use this information the next time, right? So I can shape that suggestion either to be something they continue to do to this activity or a behavior I'm suggesting they demonstrate the next activity that we do. So observation and suggestion. So I can type that out. In general, for me personally, my assignment comments are about, this 5 sentences, 6 sentences, because this is just an overall comment. The detail-y stuff is going to happen in the rubric. This is that holistic comment. So this is one way in which students can get feedback. When they read your comments, they're going to hear what they imagine you sound like in their heads. And communication is still 1 part message, 2 parts interpretation, right? So they're reading this wherever they are in their day, however things might be going in their day, however many small children are running around in their background, right? So if you're thinking, I like the comments, but do I have other choices? Then the answer is yes, you do. So you can type your comments, but you could also use one of these options in addition or in substitute down here at the bottom. So farthest on the left is a paperclip. Let's say that this is a formative activity, right? So students this isn't where they're demonstrating they fully got something. You're giving a lot of coaching on what to do. And let's say it's fairly early in the semester, and this activity, whatever it is, you know that when you coach on this activity, you're going to say the same thing to like 75% of them, right? That they're going to do this thing, and doing this activity is how they learn, but it also means that you're going to have to give the same suggestion a lot. What you could do, still use this overall observation and suggestion here, choose this paperclip. When you click on it, it says choose file, click choose file, and you can choose something from your desktop or your flash drive or whatever's attached to your computer. So you could have, in advance, made a list of the top 5 things where students need to strengthen on this activity, because you've taught it 10 times and you know that in general, that's where folks are going to struggle. And so you could have that made into a handout. And, maybe in your observations and suggestions here, you say, I noticed that you did this. I suggest you look closely at the handout I've attached at number 2 and number 4. Those are what need your attention the most. So to save yourself from having to copy and paste, or to say the same thing or type the same thing a gazillion times, you can attach a document. If you have a more advanced class, right? Students are a little farther into their study, either in a class or maybe it's a class that's close to the end of their program, to where you're working a little bit more closely one-on-one with students, really helping them tailor their own research a bit more. This attachment's great for adding more resources, right? I see you've done this. I noticed this about what you've done. I'd suggest you look into this additional study. I think it's going to really help you with your research, and you can attach it right there. So any way you would typically use attachments, you can use them here for feedback. Let's get to this middle button. It looks like a box with a triangle in the middle. Canvas says that stands for media. If you click on that, it's going to give you 2 choices. They come up as a pop-up. You can either record media directly via Canvas, or you can upload media. If you are using a browser like Chrome or Firefox, both work really well. I highly suggest recording right through using Canvas. It's what I do. So let me give you a little bit of background about how this works in my classes. It's useful. Folks generally have questions about this. I just did this in my class. I'm a big fan of audio comments. I'll talk more about that in a minute, but I recognize that audio comments may not be the preferred method of receiving feedback for certain students, right? They might prefer to see their feedback. And so whether that's an accessibility question or just a preference question, my way of addressing that in my classes is I send an email to everyone. And in that email, I say, I love to give you a variety of different feedback modalities. I think that a blend works really well. In this class, I give feedback through rubrics, written comments, audio comments, and attachments, I think is generally what I say. I say video comments. We don't do those in general because of the bandwidth they take for me to make them and for you to see them. So we'll do those in office hours if you want something in particular. So I'm going to use audio, written, attachments, and rubrics. Please let me know if all of those feedback methods are going to work for you, and if there's anything else you would like me to know about giving you feedback. And I send that email out. And in general, I find students are incredibly grateful that I asked about how they'd like to get feedback. They're excited to know that they're going to get different kinds of feedback. They almost always answer that email. And I find that they look at their feedback more often because I asked them in the first place. And so if I had a student who audio feedback didn't work for, they would have that opportunity to let me know. I could put that again in my notes column in the gradebook or somewhere else where I keep notes on my students, and I could choose not to use the audio function for them, right? Or vice versa, if you have a student who's going to be listening in general to their feedback for vision reasons, they might say, hey, I really love audio. That works really well for me. The more, the better. And put that note in there too. So I send out that email. And once I've got my students' feedback, I feel comfortable integrating audio comments as one of my choices. And this is the spot where I could do audio again or video. Personally, I choose not to do video. It just takes more. It takes more bandwidth. And so if my computer decides to not like what I'm doing, I might lose my comment while I'm making it. And I don't know what my students' bandwidth situation is on their end. And I would hate for that to be a reason they don't get the comment. Audio is much more, it just works better. And students love it. And so if I want to record audio, I literally just hit start recording. If my webcam wasn't being used right now to see all of you, I would have had the choice to do audio or video because my webcam's already engaged in our meeting. I didn't have to say audio only. But I just start talking and it just starts recording. Here it goes, right? So what I love about audio feedback, the reason that I can't encourage it too much is that students then have one more way to come alongside your message in terms of interpretation. They get to hear you. And it is priceless for them to hear you, right? Especially when they've done an amazing job and you know they worked really hard and your enthusiasm comes through in your voice, or especially when they're really struggling and you've got some relatively heavy critique comments you've got to give them. What a difference it makes to have your voice there to communicate that maybe, hey, everybody struggles. You're struggling, but that doesn't define you, right? I believe in you. You can work through this. Focus here. This is the place to pay attention. Or reach out to me. Let's work together in email, right? Or everybody struggles at this point in the semester. There's something different about hearing that and hearing authenticity and belief in your professor's voice than when you're, substituting what you think their voice is with those written comments. In general, my comments are about like they are here. 2 minutes or less. I just hit finish. I could give it a title, but I don't really need to because it attaches to the assignment. So I just hit save. Ta-da! And there it is. So the bigger the assignment in my class, bigger in whatever that might mean, right? The longer the thing is, the more involved that thing is, the more time my students have spent on it. And or if it's a really challenging assignment for a particular student, the more likely I am to integrate audio. So not everything gets audio, but stuff where I really want to make sure that I'm connecting with my students, that stuff's going to get audio. Or if I'm really tired and I just don't want to press any more keys for a little while, it is nice to have audio as an option. I feel more connected to my students, even though we're hanging out asynchronously. Let's say I have a student that's like, I would love audio, but not so much. But you're like, man, I really like recording in audio. Canvas has got you covered. Last button to the right, click on it. It looks like a speaker. It's speech to text. So all you need to do is just click the button. And then if you're like me, you're either from the East Coast or the Midwest, you just speak a little slower than you would typically speak. And Canvas is pretty good at keeping up with what you're saying. So you could speak your comments rather than typing them. This is also tremendously useful in places we used to go that we don't go much anymore, where typing might not have been so easy to do, like an airport, you know, or a hotel room or whatever. If you have the privacy to be able to speak, but you just don't want to type, here you go. Speech to text is there. When you're done speaking, you hit the black button, and then it moves into what I would call your editing space. It ends up looking just like making a typed comment, and you can look back through and check to see, look for typos, add in punctuation, unless you annotate the punctuation. If you say period or comma, it will get it in there, but otherwise you just got to come back in and, you know, pop in your punctuation, and then hit submit, and it goes in. So again, regardless of the type of activity you've asked students to do in Canvas, if it's in the Canvas gradebook, all three of these options are available to you, as well as entering that score. It's a lot of content I just threw at you. Take a minute to process, and
We
then I'll
have
take
a few questions already.
Loverly, loverly. All
Okay.
right, send them my way.
All right, so the first one, and I know, I believe Sherry also wanted to ask a question, but we had a couple in the chat already. So the first one, can we type into the rubric right there with comments, or only in the assignment comments? For example, a student might do the same thing over and over in item 1 of a rubric on several assignments in a row.
So when we talk about rubrics next week, we'll look at what their functionality is. I'm a little nervous to try and answer that question isolated from modeling, only because I think there's a likelihood that I create more confusion than less.
Mm-hmm.
Rubrics can be copied to multiple assignments. So once you build a rubric, you can attach it to more than one assignment, which means you could build it once and use it as is or modify per assignment. But every time that you come into a grading situation, it's a new grading situation. So you can't pull comments in some sort of more organized fashion from a previous grading situation, right? Something you graded last week. What you could do is copy and paste to whatever extent is helpful. Keep us going, Keelan. What you got next?
All right, next one, and I think we answered this, but does audio automatically close caption? So when you record the audio, does it automatically close caption?
Negative ghostwriter. Nope, it does not. So if you had a student who needed it captioned and you wanted to make audio comments that were captioned, I'm thinking, what do you think, Keelan, for best suggestion there? Doing something either through Zoom or through YouTube?
I like using, I really like using, if you have access to it, Studio.
Canvas
Canvas
Studio.
Studio is very, very useful. And you can do audio only. I do modified video feedback. I really don't like looking at my face all day. So I'm like, we already do that anyway. But I use it that way, but because it can get a little glitchy sometimes too. But yeah, Canvas Studio has a feature that you can actually add those subtitles.
Yeah, if your district has Canvas Studio, that's one way in which to get that done. My default for this has been to use Screencast-O-Matic and just show the screen rather than to show my face, unless it's something where I really want them to see me. But again, that video feedback is going to increase either way, screen share or video of my face is going to increase the bandwidth. But that would be, and then I could submit it to 3C Media and have it captioned. Or use YouTube and then alter the captions to make sure they're accurate.
And then Laurel had asked about the speech to text button. If you could just show that one more time, just hovering over it.
Totes my goats. It's this one to the right down here. So it looks like a speaker. Click on it. It'll give you a pop-up. And then the red button tells Canvas, go, Canvas, go. And then you can start speaking. And then the black says stop, Canvas, stop. And then you can come and edit prior to submitting.
Mhm. Thank you so much. And then I believe, Sherry, you had a question?
Yes, I think it might have been answered though in chat. I was wondering when you do speech, or let's see, media in that feedback, do you have to do your own closed captioning, or is it required?
Two different questions. One, yes, I would have to do my own I would have to use some sort of platform that would caption for me. So that's where, you know, when Keelan and I were chatting about like what platform might one use. If I wanted that audio captioned, I would need to consider if my district has it, Canvas Studio. If it doesn't, I'd probably need to record myself speaking via either Screencast-O-Matic or Zoom, and then use a platform that I can self-caption that's going to assist me with some auto captioning. So YouTube does this. I believe Zoom might also, where I can submit it. It will do its best through auto captioning to figure out what I was saying, but I'll still need to do some work on the back end to make sure it's accurate. Not really any different than speech to text. But your second question was, must you? And the answer is, you don't have to. It is protected under individual student communication. That's different in a way than the overall instructor recordings or whatnot that you would make for your class in terms of the degree of accessibility that is expected. Nevertheless, I figure universal design invites us to think, what can we do to make it the most student supportive? And so for me, that means sending out that email to check in with my students first. I'm not going to auto caption for all my students in these audio recordings because that's not required, but I am going to check in with them first and make sure that that's going to work for them.
That's very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet.
And if we have time for one more question, I'm not sure if we do or not. And maybe this, well, I think some folks really wanted to know, and I think this is something that it's like you give all this feedback, but then the students aren't looking at it. So I shared a few, they don't know where to look for it.
We
so
are
I shared a
going.
few resources in chat. Yeah.
We're on our way there. We're on our way there. People. We're on our way there. Here we go. Okay.
Yes.
So we're going to make a stop on the way. And the stop that we're going to make on the way is back to our gradebook page so I can show you how to put the notes column in. So here we go. If your gradebook doesn't look like mine, and it's not just that I only have one fake student, that's myself, but if your gradebook also doesn't look like mine because you don't have this notes column and you want it, all you have to do is go to View. There's a drop-down caret. And toward the bottom of View, there's a thing that says Columns. And you can choose to tell Canvas, I would like a notes column. And then you just click on it. If you click off of it, it goes away. But you just click on it, boom, and then it shows up. And again, this is just you. This is only you, for you. Nobody else sees this. So I'm going to show you two things. One, I'm going to show you what students see with comments and suggest the resources to you that are built right into this Google Doc for you. And I'm also going to show you a way in which students sometimes dialogue with their instructors through comments that you might not even know is there. And in both of these situations, my response is thanks, Canvas, because both of these things could be better. So here we go. Let's go back to our course. Okay. So your course, my course, a sandbox course, they all share this tool called Student View. It shows up as a set of eyeglasses on the right. You can also access it by going down to Settings, the farthest navigation tab down at the left, and choosing Student View, again, the eyeglasses. If it's late at night and you can't remember how you're looking at your class, because you know, this does happen, you'll know you're in Student View when the perimeter turns purple. The perimeter turns purple, you've arrived in the right spot. Now you're seeing a general replica of what your students see. It's not perfect, but it's decent. And so then what you can do is a number of things. You could go to your gradebook and see what students see, what their gradebook looks like, which is completely different from what your gradebook looks like. And you could put yourself in student view a little earlier and complete your own assignment. You could take your own quiz. You could submit a fake paper to your own assignment and it would show up as test students submission. Then you could go out of test student, be your regular self without the purple, grade yourself. I know this is a little being John Malkovich, but you could grade yourself in the gradebook as the test student and then basically have a mock-up of what I'm showing you here, which is times where you've practiced as being a student in your own course, and you can see what that feedback looks like. So what I hope you notice when you look at this, one, obviously this is a fake course. My student's doing incredibly well. They have 161%. But what you'll notice, I hope, is that this is not a friendly, welcoming interface to decode for a student. It's overwhelming to look at. And it's also possible students don't even know to go here because they're going to get a notification on their phone or on their email when you grade something, and it gives a truncated version. It'll give them the score, and maybe it gives a comment, but I'm not sure it does. And so students might not even know to go, that there's even more stuff there. So now that you know what this looks like, let me encourage you deeply and emphatically to play around with this a little on your own Canvas course. Put a couple things in as a fake student. Make a web video that shows you going here as a fake student so that they know this page exists. And then you can decode this stuff for them. And in the meantime, while you're busy making that, in your resources on our Google Doc, page 8, on the right, you're going to see third down this thing that says Nicole's Guide for Students to help them access grades and feedback. If you open that up, you open it up in a new tab. This is my gift to you. It's really my gift to your students. Just give it to them. You can copy it. You can just give them this link. I made it for you. So you can just give it to your students. You can literally just come to this. You can hit share. You can copy this link and you can put it in your courses. And what it is it's written for students and it walks them step by step, including screenshot visuals, through how to access their gradebook, how to make sense of what they're looking at, what the different icons mean. You can just give it to them. That's what it's for. I do the double whammy. I give them that sheet and I make a video for them in my classes. I find the double whammy is pretty effective. So let me go back in. Here we are in student view. This is what they see. Every different type of feedback comes up as a different icon. So here, this is the assignment we were just looking at, the score that they received, the total amount of points possible. The icon that looks like chatting will open up all the different comments you've made to them, including written comments and audio comments, and when those were made. And then this clipboard thing to the right opens up the rubric. So if I had completed that rubric, next session, I promise, they would be able to see all that rubric feedback. So that's how they get your feedback in your class. I'm going to take us out of student view. And one last grab bag before I get you doing some other things. We've got lots still to do, folks. But one more thing, because I love you and you asked, and I love when Lucy's face lights up. So here we go. Let's go into our course and let's go into my assignment. Because if I want to take action on a rubric, See, now you're getting excited. Here we go. If I want to take action on a rubric I've made, I got to go to the assignment so I can access that rubric. So I'm going to click on assignments. So let me come to, let me find that assignment. Where might this be? Here it is. I'm going to click on the assignment name. And then this should start to look familiar, right? This is kind of your editing space for that assignment. If I want to go in and edit the assignment, I'd choose this pencil. But once I attach a rubric, I do that on this whatever, this kind of third space. It's not that overall page with your assignments, and it's not the editing page. It's sort of the front page of this assignment from your view as the designer. That's where you attach a rubric. I'm going to get rid of this one. Don't worry. I can make another one happen. So if you don't have a rubric attached, you'll see a button that says plus rubric. You can either build a rubric from scratch, that's next week, or you can attach a rubric also next week. I'll go through this much slower at that point. But let's say I put in a rubric. Okay, I've got a rubric there. That rubric is there, but how Canvas and I interact with that rubric still needs editing. So I can see the rubric, but I need to come to this pencil. Once I've clicked on that pencil, I could do lots of editing to this. I will go much slower over this next week. But the gold at the end of the rainbow for your question you've been waiting for is down here at the bottom. You'll see all these boxes. This is how you tell Canvas how you want this rubric to function. So if you want the rubric to pre-populate that score, right? When you check the boxes, you want that score to show up. You click the box that says use this rubric for assignment grading. Ta-da! Then when you click the boxes, the score will go in. Sometimes when I import a rubric or import an assignment that had a rubric attached to it, this box becomes unchecked. I have no idea why that happens. But if it's not working the way it should, that's the thing to go look for. Is that use this rubric for assignment grading box checked. Next week, we will talk about all of these boxes more in depth. We'll talk about editing this more in depth. But once I've checked that box and I hit update rubric, we won't worry about that stuff. We'll just have that updated. Now, when I click these boxes, that score will populate up into that top score column. Right. So here's what I would like to invite you to do next. I would like to invite you to let's take 7 minutes. And I want you to use that time however feels good for you processing-wise. So on page 8, there are a number of resources that you can build the knowledge we've already taken and take it further, more, or reinforce something for yourself. So for these next 7 minutes, you could look through any one of these links on here. I'm going to quickly kind of Vanna White those for you. On the left of this table, these are all readings I encourage you to engage with now or sometime in the future related to the theory of giving feedback. So again, coming back to that question of what's your goal as a designer, as a teacher, when you're giving feedback? What's the implication when we give feedback on student learning? These texts over here, these articles are gonna really speak to that. They're thinking about the theory behind the relationship between the feedback we give and how students learn. And so I've tried to put in a whole smattering of stuff you might be excited about in there. The University of New Brunswick guide is beautiful. It's layered. There's tons of amazing stuff in there. The UCLA Center for Education, Innovation, and Learning in the sciences for assessment practices with STEM is lovely. The Colorado State University Writing Guide and the Sweetland Center for ESL, ELL are lovely. They're layered. There's way more that you're going to look at than 7 minutes worth. But in your time, you could putter around in one of these. I also made one of my own based on a participant request in a former version of this gradebook series for suggestions for giving comprehensive feedback when students do an excellent job. We often think really carefully about how we want to give feedback when students are struggling. And then when a student like knocks it out of the park, we might say, wow, nice job. And there's got to be a way to do more than that, right? So just some suggestions there for you. Right-hand side of this table is all the how-to guides. So this is the more technical side of the house. Lots of Canvas guides on those commenting features I modeled. How to view a course as a test student, so how to get in and play around with test student in your own classes. So all of these are here for you. So I'm going to invite you. Now we'll take about 5 more minutes. I'm just going to give you silence. You can leave your screen on or off, engage with something there, or just make some notes to yourself. Process a little, whatever feels right. And then we're going to have a chance to chat with each other. All right, colleagues. Boy, I dangled that carrot really ruthlessly, didn't I? I said, go take a look at this thing. And now you're like, geez, Louise, we got to do something else. You probably want to stay looking at that thing that you're looking at. But what I'm going to encourage you to do is to take your interest and enthusiasm for whatever you've looked at briefly and take it right in with you to your discussion room with a couple colleagues. I'm going to pull up my screen so you can see it, so I can walk you through what you're going to be doing. Keelan's going to lovingly whisk you in a moment into a group with 2 other colleagues. And it's pretty open-ended, but we do have a discussion protocol. Again, going back to our norms, if we say that we value everyone having a chance to speak, then we've got to have a discussion protocol that holds us to being our best selves, right? So that everybody gets that airtime. And so what I'm going to ask you to do is when you get into your group, decide who would like to go first, who would like to go second, who would like to go third. And then each person is going to have 2 minutes to share, followed by 2 minutes of open discussion time. So if Keelan and I and Lucy were in a room, if Lucy went first, she would share for 2 minutes. And then as a trio, we'd have 2 minutes to dialogue. And then we'd hear our timer go off. Somebody should have a timer, and I'll make a note to you too that'll come up over. Then the next person could go. Keelan could share for 2 minutes, 2 minutes of open discussion. We'll just trade off like that. What should you discuss? Whatever feels at the surface for you. Something you've learned in the session so far, questions you have, next steps you're considering to deepen your knowledge, something you read that's got your brain all buzzy and you're excited or interested or confused. Wherever you are, that's where you should be. Just let 2 people be there with you. It's powerful to have those moments together. So, Keelan, is there anything else that we need to do before we lovingly whisk folks into a chance to just kind of process with 2 other people?
Nope. I just wanted to let you know that 2 groups will only have 2 people in them based on our numbers. So for you, you have a little more room to share with each other.
Groups of 2, you could take a little more time each. That's right. Or a little more open dialogue at the end.
Yes.
Fabulous.
All right. Are you ready for the whisking?
Whisk away.
All right. Very good. And we're seeing more faces. So clearly you were talking to each other. Which is great.
So, hey, y'all, we've only got a couple minutes left. So I'm going to invite you to notice a couple things. And then I want to be mindful of your time and how you might engage with those things. So in our Google document on page 10, you'll see an I gots and I needs table. And these are so helpful. It's helpful for you and it's helpful for us. Helps you solidify what you got from this session, right? What makes sense? What's a little clearer? What's going around in your mind now? What did you get? And then what do you need? What questions do you have? What are you looking forward to with rubrics, maybe? What further areas can we clarify? So anywhere you want on page 10 or 11, that's available for you. And if now feels like too tight of a turnaround to do that, you're going to continue to have access to this Google document. Keelan put in the chat for you the the link to our original Google document from last week. So session 1 Google Doc. And here's our session 2 Google Doc right now. At the bottom of page 11 and the top of page 12, you're going to see an invitation to take our survey, my email address, and a whole swag bag of good 3CSN wayfinding resources, including at the bottom, that session 1 recording is available for you. So if you weren't able to be with us last week, you can be with us in spirit by watching that.
Not beautiful. It's just the Zoom version. It's nothing. Like it's not edited. So.
But it's beautiful that it lives there.
It's beautiful that it lives there, and you can.
Fast turnaround time.
Yes, it will not be nominated for an Oscar yet. Okay.
Well, you know, my kid's name is Oscar, so maybe it will be.
It will nominate.
He gives a thumbs up to a lot of things.
By Oscar.
Oh yes, yeah. If it's, you know, if it involves trucks, he's gonna give it a thumbs up. If it involves banana slugs, he's gonna give it a thumbs up.
It has dinosaurs, so I think that already is up there.
Yeah, but not as high as trucks or banana slugs. I didn't say he wasn't a tough critic. I just said, you know, you might have an in. You might have an in. So into that Gots and Needs table, if you would please, with things to help us know how the session went for you, what you got, what you need. And if now isn't a great time to do that, that's okay. You can always come back to this Google document by telling Google that you'd like to find it again. So the way to do that is on your screen, right? When you're looking on your Google document, you'll see the title for this session. To the right, you'll see 3 icons. Yours are different than mine. Your icons, you're going to see a star. Your middle icon that you're going to see looks like a recycle symbol, or like 3 triangles connecting to each other. That's the symbol that also looks like Google Drive. So if you click that, that's a way of you telling Google, hey, Google, I'd like to find this again in my Google Docs. And it like paper clips it to your Google documents for you to find more easily. So you can always come back here when it's convenient.
Wait, can you show that again? I'm so sorry. I totally missed that.
No worries. I can't show it because I made the Google Doc, so it doesn't look the same on mine, but I can tell you where to look. So on your Google document, up at the top, so the one that you've been adding to on your screen, you're going to see the title. You'll see a star. And where I have what looks like a file folder, you should have something that looks like the recycle symbol. If you click that, that's a way to take this document and paper clip it on your Google Drive so it's easier to find again. So that when you open your drive, this document will show up there. Otherwise, it's kind of stuck in the halls of Google. So by doing that, it just makes it easier for you to find this again if you want to.
Thank you.
Okay, would it be okay if I show them from my screen?
Yes, that would be wonderful.
Yeah, let me show, because it gets so sticky with so many things that we are trying to save, right? So I like to do it 2 different ways. So one way is to, I like to actually go up here and save it in a folder. So whatever is helpful for me, I have these little folders that I put it in, and I can make a new folder if I want to. So I can click on choose another folder and I can create a new folder for my bookmarks. But you can also click here, add shortcut to drive. And then if you click on this one, go to my drive, then you can go ahead and make a new folder and put whatever it is. So you can put like if you want to have, like, let's say that I want to do one for Gradebook. And then I'm just going to call it Gradebook. And then I'm going to put it here. And that's it.
And then at the end of this series, I'm going to send you lovingly on your way with a swag bag that includes one document that includes all of the readings that were in all of our sessions, and it will include all 5 Google documents from the sessions. So that's coming to you. I'll email that to you as well, so that, you know, when you're hankering for a Gradebook reading, in 2 months, be like, "Ooh, what's still in there that I haven't looked at?" So much good stuff. So much good stuff. Well, folks, I have kept you longer than our time, and I'm so grateful for any and all of the time that you give to one another and to Keelan and I. We learn so much from each other and in each other's company. I think it's such a gift to practice talking about grading with each other. It's not something that happens in a judgment-free space on our campuses very often. And so just having that opportunity feels rich and powerful in itself. So thank you so much for being here.